Happy Boxing Day everyone, and welcome to Let's Look at Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone statistics. This is post-surgery Zelgaris 115 speaking. I'm still very exhausted, in a lot of pain, under the influence of a lot of painkillers, but I really wanted to get this one additional Christmas present out today by 25th December, so just have patience with me catching my breath from time to time. I unfortunately did not have as much time as I would have liked for this video. Nevertheless, I do hope you will enjoy what's to follow. This will be a brief summary of the contents of the Philosopher's Stone game and some interesting statistics thrown here and there to really put into perspective what this game contains and what its balancing is like. Now I have teased that I'm gonna make a special video here and there during the Let's Play itself. Those of you who are familiar with my Tomb Raider Let's Plays probably already knew that this is gonna happen, simply because I have this tradition of doing final stats videos when I finish a Let's Play run, just to take a unique look and perspective through the game and see at all its contents. And also it serves almost like a vacation snapshots photo album, where we just get to relive some of our adventures. So I hope you're having a wonderful Christmas or your equivalent holiday. And yeah, cozy up, hope you have a warm cup of coffee or chocolate or cocoa, and yeah, I'm gonna guide you through what we've been through in the game itself. Now, the way I'd like to tackle this is with the help of this magical blank parchment. The more topics we discuss, more information is gonna appear on it. First and foremost, I'd like to start with the delicious Bertie Bott's Every Flavor beans. We have found 721 out of 727 beans, and it is absolutely possible to get all of them, and this is my own failing. As mentioned in my previous video, I was not aware for over 2 decades about one secret in this game. This is one of the pitfalls I discussed in the very first episode. I'll never know for sure, I guess none of us will, that we have actually found everything, but you know, pulling our shared knowledge together, all of us Harry Potter fans will make it somehow. So thank you guys so much for your assistance in pointing this secret out. It needs to be said also that I need to correct one of my previous statements. Back when sneaking back from the tower, I said that you will never be able to at any one point have over 600 beans. Awesome, so we have 596 beans. However, we have one more trait to do with Fred and George, so we're not gonna finish the game quite with that number. But this is the highest number of beans you can get, unfortunately not 600. Well, this is because I thought the highest number is 596, but in fact you can have 602 beans available in your inventory if you do actually get all of them. And who knows, there might be more beans out there whose existence I am not aware of still. Hopefully that's not the case. Now, we have traded with Fred and George 6 times, 25 beans each. That means that we have overall traded 150 beans total, bringing us down from 722 to 571, or actually what you'll end up with at the very end of the game, should you 100% it, 577 beans. Now back to the magical parchment. Let's see if it's as magical as the old gypsy woman claimed. Ah, there we go, 721 out of 727 beans, awesome. Now, the beans are, I assume, delicious, some of them disgusting, but we were actually not able to eat any of them. Instead, we've been devouring 46 chocolate frogs spread throughout the game. Lots of calories that every young wizard needs, especially if they're running and jumping all over the place. On top of that, we have written our name into 45 save game books. Now, what's confusing to me is that these next goodies are not part of the same package where the chocolate frog comes from, which they absolutely should, and that's of course the wizard cards. Now, whilst our collection contains 25, we haven't exactly found and picked up all 25 of them. That was the case with 17, however, 6 of them we traded for 150 Bertie Bott's Every Flavor beans with Fred and George, and one of them we traded with Hagrid, Salazar Slytherin, for 21 fire seeds. So that 17 we picked up, 7 we traded, and there was one card that Ron gave us in the hospital wing when he came to visit. This card Ron only gives to us, not just after defeating Voldemort, but for having accumulated the wealth of 250 beans or more, and having found all traded previous 24 wizard cards. So that brings us to the total of 25. Now, on to the challenge stars. You know, looking at the golden sheen, I always used to imagine that these are again chocolate stars wrapped in a golden tinfoil paper. I don't know why, just after seeing the chocolate frogs for the first time in the game, it completely changed my life, and now I see everything is made out of chocolate in the Harry Potter universe. And you know what? I'm probably not far devoid from reality. Anyway, we have found all 32 of these, meaning that we have earned overall 80 extra house points from 4 different spells challenges. Because remember, for Alohomora, there were no challenge stars, just a very short gauntlet and tutorial with Hermione. Then for the flying course, there were no challenge stars, even though we were awarded 20 house points. And finally, for the potions lesson, Snape just didn't give a damn. That bastard even took house points away from us. Okay, now the other item, of course, that I already mentioned that we've collected is the 21 fire seeds. You need all 21 to trade for 1 wizard card with Hagrid to help him, I guess, hatch Norbert better somehow. But even if you give him less, it's still gonna happen, right? He doesn't actually need 21. I guess he wants to keep them for later use to make Norbert comfortable or something like that. Giving him the 21 fire seeds gives us the card, but honestly just finishing the level also gives us 1 extra item, and I'm gonna get to that in a short while. Now, if you've been sort of keeping a track of the numbers so far, you will realize that we are at 890 different goodies collected overall. However, this is not all of it. There are 19 very unique, I would even say key items we have collected throughout the course of this journey. Now, counting them as items might be stretching it too far, but that's why I never included them on the level screens themselves in the actual Let's Play. I only counted beans, frogs, save game books, stars and fire seeds, and of course the wizard cards. So, to show you what items I'm talking about, let's remember when we finished our charms class and Hermione was chasing us using our own owl, Hedwig, via 2 letters. She really wasn't a good friend on that day. So we received 2 annoying letters from Hermione that we collected. Later on, after a fun chase, we got Remember back from Malfoy. However, we immediately have given it to Neville afterwards. We didn't keep it. Now, back to my previous point about the fire seeds. No matter how many you bring to Hagrid, if you finish the level, he will award you with a flute that helps some creatures sleep. Makes sense Hagrid would have this, and I love the fact that flute is here, which means this was inspired from the book rather than the movie. Okay, now, all these goodies taken into consideration, there are some that we had to put some extra effort in. I'm of course talking about the golden snitches. Now, this will really depend on whether you are playing the Quidditch League or not, but in the main campaign, you will catch 2 golden snitches. You cannot progress without it. If you also decide to play the Quidditch League, you can catch up to additional 7 golden snitches. Assuming you want to win every match, that's exactly what you have to do, bringing us to the 9 golden snitches caught in our first year total. Now, how can we celebrate catching 9 golden snitches if I'm not gonna share our best time with you? And that was actually the very first one. When we played against Slytherin as part of the campaign, it was 10-20 seconds. It's absolutely incredible, and I feel we were so close to making it a single-digit second number, but alas. And I also remember how cocky I was thinking we beat Roderick Plumpton's 3.5 second score. No, we did not. But still, this is a result I can be proud of, and I'm hoping that one day I'll manage to make it a single digit. Following golden snitches, we were on a quest to look for certain potion ingredients, 4 of them to be exact. Molly, Wigan tree bark, Flabberworm mucus and Dittany. We have managed to find all 4, even though Dittany we had to go through detour of an entire level before we managed to reach it. Then, on top of that, we have managed to snag the winged key in the Forbidden Corridor. Now, this took some doing, some damage to be taken, but the important thing is that we ultimately got it. It's definitely an item I'm counting, and our best time in terms of catching it was 18 seconds 82. So, far longer than a Quidditch match. Now, to really close off this whole flying on a broomstick chapter, don't worry, I did not forget about the magic rings, or hoops, as I think Madame Hooch referred to them. We have together flown through 3 courses, the basic one as part of the main campaign, then again the basic one as part of the main menu option, and then the advanced one. Now each course has 82 magic rings. The difference between the basic in the campaign and the basic in the menu option does not exist. But the difference between the basic in the menu option and the advanced in the menu option is just the ring placement and the overall time that the game gives you to complete it, not the actual number of magic rings. So overall, 82 times 3 is 246 magic rings we've flown through, and our best time for the basic course was 1 minute and 34 seconds. For the advanced one, it was 1 minute and 31 seconds, so we actually managed to perform even better for the advanced course. Now that is impressive. And to finally top this all off, probably the most important item out of all of them and the namesake of this game, the Philosopher's Stone. We have finally collected it in the very final level from the Mirror of Erised. As explained by Dumbledore outside of the video game, in the book and the movie, the idea was that the mirror would only give the stone to someone who wishes to have it but not use it. One of his more brilliant ideas, as he said. So that's it. Altogether, we are at 909 items. Still missing the 6 beans from our missed secret, meaning there are 915 different items, in my way of seeing things at least, that you can get in this game, which is absolutely incredible. Now I've teased this a couple of times, the house points. What's up with those? So, if you remember at the very end of our Let's Play, we have finished the game with 407 house points. That's the highest number of house points you can get. But as it turns out, this might be the result of a bug. Now I mentioned this briefly when we entered the potions classroom for the first time, where Professor Snape was essentially saying he takes 5 points away from us. Well, as it turns out, this is a bug in the European version of the game, whereas in the US version of the game, these will be deducted. Please check out the full video uploaded by Ultimate Goblin. I really recommend it. I take no credit for this is his work. Essentially, the video itself contains multiple differences between the US and European version of the game, so some of you might actually remember losing those points, whereas the rest of us does not. And that's because these are regional differences depending on if you are playing the Sorcerer's Stone in US or the Philosopher's Stone in the rest of the Europe. That's essentially it. So 407 is the absolute maximum you can get in the European version, and 402 is the maximum you can get in the US version of the game. I guess Snape is a British guy who really doesn't like Americans. I have no other explanation for this. Now hold on a sec. The parchment is almost full, but we are hardly at the end of this video. What's the deal with that? Well, let me introduce you to a very fun idea I had. How about we take into consideration all the different sorts of magical objects and creatures we encounter in this game? Yep, that's right. If you were ever wondering how many gnomes there are in Philosopher's Stone, or how many chests can be opened, well, do I have a treat for you. I'm gonna go through all the different magical objects we encounter and interact with, and also I'm going to link it directly into the spells usage of the 5 different spells Harry has been taught in his first year at Hogwarts. And we'll essentially see which spells are used more, which less, and really what's the ratio of that. So in case you're interested, please do stick around. Now, I'm gonna start from the least used spell to the most used spell. For the most used one, you probably already have a very good idea which it is, but still, seeing the numbers is a whole different story. So, the least used spell, by the slightest margin in this game, is Lumos. It's also the final spell we used, so that kind of makes sense. We have used Lumos exactly 17 times to really activate 17 different gargoyles, which actually throughout the course of the game have created 39 different clouds of light for us to jump on or step on. Now, I do need to also consider the 4 times we've cast Lumos when learning it, right? In DADA classroom, thanks to Professor Quirrell, who saw it fit to equip us with tools that will be his ultimate destruction. Nevertheless, that brings us to 21 Lumos usages total, which is just 3% of my rough estimate of just how many spells we've cast in this game, okay? Now, very important disclaimer, all the numbers as it pertains to the spell usage in this video are just estimates. I unfortunately haven't had the time after my surgery and before today, on 25th December, to go through every single spell we've cast, and honestly, it wouldn't make that much of a difference to the end results either. So I really found it better to just share my estimates based on how many enemies and magical objects there are to interact with, assuming that each will require the spell only once, although there are objects that need to have Flipendo cast on them multiple times, and I'm taking that into consideration as well, based on certain averages I have in my mind. But the actual times we've cast a spell and the times we've missed when casting the spell are not taken into consideration, okay? So please do not take these numbers as absolute, but just as an interesting comparison to see how many opportunities you get to use a spell and what's the overall usage. So for Lumos, that's 21 times, which is 3% total from Harry's first year at Hogwarts. On to the next spell, which was used more by one single occurrence, Wingardium Leviosa. We have used it roughly 22 times. There are 18 Wingardium Leviosa blocks with 18 respective plates to put them on, and we have of course cast it 4 times when we were learning the spell, bringing us to the total of 22. Again, roughly 3% of the overall spell usage. I'm surprised because I always assumed Wingardium Leviosa is the least used spell, and I always tended to remember Lumos more prominently, but I think that's because of the Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban. So, there you have it. Lumos, Wingardium Leviosa, roughly the same kind of usage. Now, Incendio is where things get really interesting, because Incendio cannot be used on magical objects, but instead on magical creatures of all sorts of kinds. So I'm gonna take you through them. We're gonna start with probably the most varied enemy in the entire game, and that's the Venomous Tentacula with its many forms, and I guess we could say strains. I'm gonna start with the ground Venomous Tentaculas, just plopped onto the floor in middle of nowhere in a garden maze, guarding the entrance into the greenhouse against students who want to get to their lesson on time, apparently. You've gotta love Hogwarts. So, we have actually encountered 14 of these, but this is very important, and the reason I'm starting with these is that we did not know Incendio at the time, which I think is an absolutely brilliant level design, because the next time you encounter Venomous Tentacula, you know Incendio and you can take revenge, and this feels incredibly satisfying. For now, however, we had to bypass 14 of them, with mixed results. I did manage to get hit for the first time in this playthrough here after all. So I'm not counting these towards the Incendio usage, but we're definitely counting these towards the enemies count. Now, there are different kinds of Venomous Tentaculars. As I said, there are also those that are potted in pots, which is really cute. And that's the first one where we practice our Incendio on, according to Professor Sprout's instructions. So this is just one-headed one. But then there are other pots, containing 2-headed one, 3-headed one, this 4-headed disgusting monstrosity in this corridor of doom of death, and finally the 6-headed one, which I believe we actually incendioed twice. Now to get to the Flipendo switch and back. That's not it, however. There are more Venomous Tentaculars. There are of course those attached to the walls, and mostly it was 1-headed ones we have encountered 23 times. However, remember in the Fire Seeds cave, there was one with 2 heads and another one with 3 heads. So we need to take those into consideration. Other enemies we can use Incendio on, well, put simply, the Spiky Bushes. What a brilliant scientific name. You have to admire the wizarding world and its thoroughness in trying to understand creatures. I really feel like Newt Scamander was the only one. So, 52 Spiky Bushes, we use Incendio to shrink them so they can grow again, I guess, but temporarily they'll become harmless. I believe this makes them the most common enemy of the game as well, just as an interesting side note. Now remember, there was that one poor tree troubled by 5 vines that we dispatched, but there were 5 other vines in the Devil's Snare itself. These ones did not care about a tree, they cared about killing Harry, whatever it took. We incendioed them to oblivion. And then finally the 2 pots, which were strangling Hermione and Ron just hanging out. I love the added detail of Hermione's hair flowing to the ground on the side of her head. Brilliant, absolutely hilarious stuff. Remember, each of these pots had to be hit by Incendio 5 times. Now before I share the Incendio total, let's just keep in mind we cast Incendio also 4 times to learn it in the actual classroom with Professor Sprout. So overall, my rough estimate of the Incendio usage is that we used it 107 times, which is already much more than with Wingardium Leviosa and Lumos, bringing us to the 14% total usage of spells in this game. Now, on to Alhambra. an absolute fan favorite, although probably the hardest shape to draw and get that 100%. Alohomora is never used against any kinds of magical creatures, but instead on magical items. Now, we're all thinking chests, of course, aren't we? Well, as it happens, there are 95 of them in the entire game. It's a short game, but it's filled to the brim with chests, almost 100. Keep in mind, I have found only 93 out of the 95 because of the missed secret. Again, this is gonna be a reoccurring theme in this video. Then, the most common item after that was all the different locks on doors that we managed to open, 22 of them. Then there were multiple mirrors, 6 of them, we could cast Alohomora at and enter. Then 6 garden hedges, all just in that one level in front of the greenhouse. Then a staple of the series, and I somehow feel emotionally like openable Alohomora paintings are everywhere, and yet there are only 5 of them in the first game. This kind of blew my mind. I thought that we're gonna be talking 20 paintings or something. No. Only 5. Then, a counterpart to the doors we unlocked, there were 5 grates in the dungeons that we managed to unlock. Furthermore, and this is really interesting, 5 dragon statues. And why am I considering this interesting? Well, because you need to cast Alohomora on them to turn them by either 180 or 90 degrees, which will result in a mechanism opening up a pathway, usually towards a secret. However, the same thing happens if you flipendo them, but even though they look identical, some statues accept Alohomora, some flipendo, even though the result is always them being turned, which is a bit frustrating. I felt like this is where there's a lack of consistency. Then there were 4 walls we opened in the caves with fire seed plants with Alohomora. Then remember there were these cute 4 flower shelves with flower pots in the greenhouse. Then again, this feels like such a staple of the series, opening up bookcases with Alohomora. But there were in fact only 3 of them in the entire game. First 2 just after Hermione taught us Alohomora in the Charms class, and then towards the very end of the game when sneaking down from the tower. That's it. Then there were also 2 walls with 3 candles each in the Lumos challenge, very characteristic for this level, each leading to a secret. Then there were 2 ingredients shelves and much larger potions shelf. Then the one and only armor that does not accept flipendo but Alohomora, but in this case, unlike with the dragon statues, I accept it, because we're not hitting the armor to shake beans from it like apples from an apple tree, but actually making the whole wall behind the armor open, so I like this a lot. Then there was this unremarkable looking short wall, which really reminds me of this fountain over here, which I think is probably the one and only item we were able to also close behind us. Oh no, there was also one dragon statue we were able to close with Alohomora and trap ourselves inside a secret, but for obvious reasons I didn't do that. Then, sort of the final magical object was the ornate glass in Lumos challenge, absolutely gorgeous, and let's not forget we had to cast Alohomora 4 times to really learn it. This brings our total usage to casting Alohomora roughly 168 times, which is a total of 22% spell usage in this game, okay? Do you have all the percentage added up so far? Because we are at 42% overall, so you already know what the remaining 58% is responsible for. Flipendo! Is there a more signature sound of the game than Harry screaming out loud to the top of his lungs, Flipendo? Probably not, and for a very good reason. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. We have hit 67 flipendo switches throughout the course of the game. We have broken 36 vases. Now, most of these do contain 1 bean, but sometimes there's an exception and they are empty. Sometimes we use them to distract Filch, who knows. Then we have knocked over 20 different flipendo cauldrons, as the professor taught us. And then they're surprised that their school is full of hooligans, just breaking stuff. We have also tried to shake down beans from 18 different suits of armor. Now some of these have repeated in different instances of the same Hogwarts corridors, but ultimately altogether there's 18 of them. Important thing towards my flipendo count, sometimes all it takes is 1 flipendo, sometimes you need to cast it even 5 times to get everything from a suit of armor. I've decided to average it to 2 per armor and leave it there. Then, this is very interesting, we have hit 16 pieces of junk thrown at us and Ron by the mountain troll. 16 is the lowest number you need to hit to make it flawlessly through this boss fight. However, theoretically, if you make a mistake and miss something, you can increase that overall number, and if the junk will hit Ron and not you, you can do it infinite number of times, essentially increasing your Flipendo spell count for whatever reason you would want to do that. So the junk thrown at us by a troll is a bit of a variable, and therefore your mileage may vary in terms of Flipendo usage. Anyway, 16 is the lowest number it takes to do this boss fight flawlessly. Then there are 9 small Flipendo blocks we have pushed many times. Given also how many times we had to push each of the 2 blocks in our boss fight with Professor Quirrell, I decided to average all these blocks to 5 times cast. Whether you agree or not, that's what I decided. I think that's most appropriate, since we probably pushed the blocks like 12 or 13 times during that boss fight. Whereas others we pushed once, twice or 3 times. Then we have Flipendoed 7 fire plants, collecting the fire seeds. We have also Flipendoed 6 boulders, but remember, 2 of those boulders we had to cast Flipendo at twice to make them move across the entire corridor, or to reveal what I thought at the time was a secret. Then we have Flipendoed 6 stalactites, not stalagmites, those actually protrude from the ground, as I later checked and found out, so apologies for misleading you. The stalactites protrude from the ceiling, 6 of them went down and created stepping stones of sorts. Now remember, at the very final level in yesterday's episode, we have Flipendoed potions. We have Flipendoed the correct antidote to the fire potion 5 times, and then I Flipendoed each of the potions just for a good measure, bringing us to the total of 11 times, but it's still only 6 potions. Then we have Flipendoed 5 pairs of Flipendo cocks, triggering all sorts of mechanisms. And now I'm getting to the painful topic of, again, the dragon statues. So again, 5 of them, but they do not require Alejomora this time, but Flipendo. Yet they do the same thing, they just turn by a certain number of degrees, whatever. Now, I have decided to average this to twice, because some Flipendable dragon statues need you to Flipendo them even 4 times, some only once, and some need to be wound up like wind-up toys to make a full turn and summon 8 beams. So it really depends, but I've decided to average it to 2 times per dragon statue, just for full transparency. Then, in the greenhouse, in Ring Incendio Challenge, we found these 4 unremarkable trees, each of them revealing 3 beans. Then, at the very end of the Incendio Challenge, there were 4 panels. Now, I did not count these as Flipendo switches, because they are different after all. They let the water in, they look different, they sound different, but these are the only 4 of its kind in the game. Next are the pillars surrounding the Mirror of Erised. Now, whilst there aren't just 4 of them of their kind in existence, we could only topple 4 of them on Voldemort, because he will always destroy the remaining 2. So, 6 in the game, but only 4 we managed to Flipendo by timing it correctly with his Avada Kedavra. Then, when we got to walk on the borders of the Forbidden Forest, we decided to cut down a couple of dead trees. So first of all, vertical logs that we could walk upon, and we also had to use Flipendo to roll some horizontal logs, almost like the barrel at the very beginning of the game. Then we had to also topple over 2 Flipendo bookcases, and my absolute favorite, the wizard and witch statues. The wizard actually we could use twice in the game only, even though we encountered it technically more times, but it was not interactable on those points. You need to cast it 3 times to get all the beans. Witch is even more generous. Even though we did this only twice, each time we casted it 4 times to get all the beans. So, with the wizard it was 6 total, with the witch 8 total. And again, great attention to detail, I keep coming back to this, but there was one shrubbery cut into the shape of a dragon statue over here. We had to cast Flipendo at it 4 times to get all 4 beans. Later on in the game, after the greenhouse, Hagrid finished its counterpart in the Hogwarts grounds, but this one was not Flipendoable. It's a word, I promise. And then we have encountered and cast at the Mirror of Erised during the Voldemort boss fight. I'm pretty sure more than 5 or 6 times, but if you have a perfect run of this boss fight, which wasn't my case, still managed to avoid getting hit, but I wasn't perfect and economical with my casts, it takes at least 4 Flipendo casts for the Mirror of Erised to really deal damage to Voldemort 4 times in the second phase of the boss fight. And again, I mentioned you before, but let's finish this list with where it all began, the Flipendo barrel, which we had to cast Flipendo at twice to get it out of the way. So, I'm not taking us to the Flipendo summary because we're not done with Flipendo, not by a long shot. This is the spell. Instead, let's take a look at the all-castable object summary. Well, I am absolutely happy to say that overall we have cast all sorts of different spells, be it Lumos, Wingardium Leviosa, Alejomora or Flipendo, on 433 magical objects. But you can make it to 435 provided you open those 2 chests in the secret we missed. And those very attentive of you have noticed I have not mentioned Incendio here. Well, it's because it's not used on objects at all. It's used on magical creatures. Now we're not done with you, Flipendo. That's why we need to take a look at some of the remaining enemies we have encountered in the game, starting with 34 gnomes. It's 1 Flipendo each, very straightforward, do not let them bite you and take away your beans permanently. Then, we have encountered also 27 orange snails, which later on in Prisoner of Azkaban they decided to call them Streelers. Again, I'm not sure if this is based on any of the books, but that's how it is. In the games it's just orange snails, in Prisoner of Azkaban it's called Streeler. 27 of these we spun around after casting Flipendo. I'm pretty sure we casted some of them multiple times, but I don't really have the exact numbers to really support this, so I'm just gonna say 27 for now. Then we have encountered 13 Doxies, but if I remember correctly, it took 3 Flipendos to destroy one of them, and 2 Flipendos to destroy another, but I'm not sure if one of the 3 Flipendos hit. It's all very strange. So yeah, let's say 11 Doxies we could dispatch with 1 Flipendo, and 2 Doxies it took 2 Flipendos. I think that's best to average it out like that. Then, Fire Crabs encountered only 2 of them, and only in 1 level, which seems like a terrible shame. So this is interesting because you cast Flipendo to just briefly stun them, then you cast Flipendo to turn them on their back, and before they recover from that, you need to cast Flipendo to make them fall from a ledge, otherwise you're not going to permanently dispose of them. We did this to 2 Fire Crabs, 1 we had to Flipendo multiple times to make him fall into a pit, 1 we only had to move Flipendo once to make him fall from stalactite. So really, I decided to average 4 Flipendo on each of these crabs on average. That's how I'm gonna count it. Important note here, however, is that if you're playing the US version of the game, you are gonna encounter a fire crab in place of one of those horizontal wooden logs. So you're gonna cast 1 Flipendo less on that, but you're gonna have to put up with a fire crab, and I assume you're gonna Flipendo him to oblivion, although there is no ledge from which he could fall, so this is very insidious. I'm not sure why they decided to make this change for US, it's really, really odd. But 1 extra fire crab in this region of the game's release. Again, the footage is not from me, but instead from the Ultimate Goblin. So feel free to check out the full video, I will add a link in the description. And moving on to Peeves the Poltergeist. Oh boy. Interesting how we need to learn Scourge in the second game to get rid of him, but here, in 2 of those encounters, 4 Flipendos are enough to get rid of him. That's 8 Flipendos total, but we have actually encountered Peeves additional times when trying to sneak up into the tower and down from the tower. He was more of a nuisance to Filch and Mrs. Norris than he was to us, which I find absolutely amazing. Just the idea that he's an absolute dick and a douchebag to everyone, not just to us, it makes it feel like a living world. This is great stuff. And finally, we have cast Flipendo, of course, 4 times in Quirrell's classroom when learning it. So my friends, this brings us to a total, again, very rough estimate, assuming we didn't miss any and assuming my averages of multiple use objects are correct, 451 times, which is 58% of all spells cast in this game. Hardly surprising that Flipendo takes the spot, but now we know, I don't want to say exact, but rough numbers to support this. Now I don't like things unfinished, so let's look at some of the remaining and I would even say more unique enemies that we have encountered in the game. Let's start with who is a real villain of this game, not he who must not be named, but Draco Malfoy. This little douchebag, both duels with him are some of highlights for me in the game. The Wizard Crackers duel and later on the Remembrall Chase. Both are incredibly fun, and I'm surprised he and Harry didn't become friends for, you know, Malfoy going out of his way to prepare lovely surprises and games for Harry, but there you have it. I guess for Harry it's a bit different with actual Bane being involved than to us players. So we defeated him with the Wizard Crackers, then chasing the Remembrall, getting the Remembrall as a prize, and similar to Malfoy, we have essentially fought against 3 other Slytherins during 3 Quidditch matches, 1 in the campaign and 2 in the Quidditch League. Each enemy seeker I'm considering an enemy, and it was 3 Slytherin seekers, 4 Ravenclaw seekers, including the very final match at the end, and 2 Hufflepuff seekers, only in the Quidditch League from the main menu, not in the main campaign at all. Then, this is really creepy, Peeves was a nuisance. Bloody Baron was absolutely horrifying. Now, we had multiple encounters with him, but if there are multiple encounters within one level, I consider that only one enemy. And it's something I'm going to bring up when we discuss Filch and Mrs. Norris. So Bloody Baron, I'm overall going to count twice, because we encountered him in both dungeon levels. Then, we move on to the Mountain Troll, and again, we had essentially 2 boss fights with him, one when he was chasing us, we were focused on surviving and getting all 89 beans, and another when he was throwing junk at us, but it's still the same Mountain Troll, I'm counting him once. I wonder what his name is. I mean, trolls should have the intelligence to have names, I think, anyway. Then, Filch. Argus Filch, the caretaker of the school, a squib who hates all wizard because, I guess, of that. It's a heavy burden he carries with him, and I really feel sorry for him. Imagine being a muggle in a wizard world, that can't be easy. So we have encountered him in sneaking up the tower and sneaking down the tower, and in both cases we had to make sure he will not see us. Then things got a bit more interested when Filch and Mrs. Norris teamed up, just a few seconds after we started the sneaking down the tower level. Now again, there were multiple Filch and Mrs. Norris encounters in this level, but I'm counting each of them only once, as they are a unique enemy. I'm counting them multiple times only if they're spread across multiple levels, which is not Mrs. Norris's case, but it is Filch's case. Then Fluffy. Encountered all his heads once, but I'm counting him as one creature, not each head individually. I did that with Devil's Swarm, right? The pots and the vines, but with Fluffy, I consider him only one enemy. Then, past the Devil's Swarm, on our path to the chess challenge, we had a brief stop in a room full of winged keys. One is an item that we tried to get, and on the second try we succeeded without taking damage, but we were surrounded by 5 swarms of other flying keys. Not much we could do about these enemies, just avoid them to the best of your ability. And then, sort of the final challenge before the final level was the chess game. And this is interesting because this essentially introduced 8 completely unique enemies to us. There was a white pawn and a black pawn, a white tower and a black tower, white queen and a black queen, and a white and a black bishop. So these 8 pieces were all trying to crush us to bloody bits, but thankfully with clever maneuvering and thinking one step ahead, we managed to avoid that grisly fate. And then finally, our final 2 enemies, I'm considering these individually because first we really only fought Professor Quirrell trying to Avada Kedavra us from top of that huge giant room, but we managed to reach him. For some reason he got scared. I guess he knew what's gonna happen if Harry touches him. And then we instead fought Lord Voldemort, who took over Quirrell's body. I'm not even sure if that killed Quirrell or what the hell would have happened if Voldemort was not to die. Difficult to say, but I'm counting each of these guys as an enemy, and using Voldemort's own spells against him, we managed to defeat him whilst keeping Harry's conscience clear because he never technically used Avada Kedavra, so that's really neat. Now this brings us to the total number of enemies, and I'd like to just say that the total count is no surprise. You've seen it on the screen in the previous level. That's 222 enemies. However, some enemies you could consider unique, right? For example, we had 2 duels with Malfoy, but it's still just one Malfoy. And we encountered Peeves 5 times, but really it's just one Peeves. So taking all these things into considerations for enemies like even Bloody Baron that make repeat appearance, or Filch, I decided to make another count, in case that will satisfy you more, to see how many unique enemies we have encountered, assuming that every single gnome or venomous tentacula is unique. And that makes it 209 unique enemies that we have encountered, spread across 222 enemy encounters. Now, encountering all these enemies must result in some damage being taken, right? Well, the challenge I imposed on myself throughout this run was to finish the campaign without taking damage. I have failed at 4 points. I'm talking about you, Venomous Tentacula, Peeves, and a Swarm of Keys. However, whilst we received damage 4 times in the campaign, I tried to go back and retry those passages to show you how it can be done without taking damage, so hopefully you still found the walkthrough helpful. However, remember, we did the Quidditch League, which is not part of the main campaign, and there I also did not manage to avoid getting damage. I am sad to say that out of those 7 matches, we got hit in 4 of them. Only once in each of those 4, but still. The first time we got hit was in match number 2 by Ravenclaw Seeker, then in match number 4 by the Slytherin Seeker, then in match number 5 by Ravenclaw Seeker, and then in the finals, which is very appropriate, in match number 7, again by Ravenclaw Seeker. We really became arch rivals with Ravenclaw at this point. So, if you count the campaign and the Quidditch League, we got hit 8 times, but again, the campaign, those parts I at least retried to show you how it can be done without damage. And the Quidditch League, I never had the ambition to do it without damage because of the random nature of when the enemy Seeker will decide to beat the living hell out of you, or when they'll just fly by. It's really difficult to predict. Avoiding bludgers is much easier. However, I am happy to say we haven't died a single time. Except at the very end where it was scripted that Harry would faint, and the way it's explained in the game manual is that all Harry's deaths are just feints to make it more kid-friendly, right? But we at least did it without falling into Deathly Pit once or anything like that, which is awesome. Talking about not falling into pits, I'm finally gonna bring us to the point of my greatest shame, and that is secrets. The one final field missing in our magical parchment. I have managed to find 54 out of 55 secrets, even though I was under the impression I have found all of them, and that's because Fireseed Caves strike again. I said this in the level itself, difficult to say what is a secret and what isn't, and that's why I went 2 decades playing this game never knowing I missed it, and thanks to your comments, you've told me that there is in fact a secret. Now you wanna know something funny? I took the same approach to this game to ensure I find everything as I did in Tomb Raider 4. I was willingly falling into almost every single pit in the game. Why? Thinking there might be something I have missed inside a pit. When it comes to the waterfall cave, here, I have checked the pit at the very beginning, I have checked the pit at the very end, and I've never checked the pit in the middle, in between those 2 orange snails, and that's how I missed the secret. My eyeballs almost popped out of my sockets when I followed your instructions, and replaying this part in the debug mode I actually found this. This changed everything. So I'm sorry to say about this, but hopefully with the added link into the video description and a comment from me, you will be able to retrospectively find it when checking that video, ensuring that you guys will not miss it like I did. And we already covered what this means for object usage and for beans found. So that's it. The parchment is finally complete. And we are approaching the end of the video. However, I have 3 more surprises for you. First and foremost, let's resolve this game's biggest mystery. How many lines of dialogue does Harry have? Now I made sure to put this game under very close scrutiny to capture every single one and count all of them, and boy do I have news for you. Play the montage. Anyway, as for this one, you need to step here. You'll see Hermione and Neville entering, finally. Separate beast card.
Lines look dangerous. I better not step on them. Give me back Neville's Remember-All, Malfoy. That must be a fire seed plant. Hagrid told me to stay away from the hot seeds. That must be Dittany. Where am I? I wonder if Snape tricked me. From what Hermione told me, I think that's the Molly. Oh no, it's the bloody Baron. That looks like Wigan tree bark.
I would recommend against it.
Flubberworm mucus. That must be Dittany. Hermione, are you alright? Now, how can I get up there? That could come in handy if I have to distract Filch along the way. Wow. I'll try the flute. That might put Fluffy to sleep for a while. Wow.
Happy Christmas, everyone! Haha! The Philosopher's Stone is ours, you sucker! Uh-oh. So 15 actual lines of dialogue, 3 wow exclamation, and 1 falling noise and 1 death noise. Again, it really is up to your own interpretation what you consider a unique line and what you don't, but honestly, I just wanted to count all of these. My preferred way of doing this would be to count wows, as those are legitimate words, and then the 15 lines of actual dialogue with subtitles or just sound playback. I wouldn't really count the falling noise and the death sound at the very end, but it is what it is, make of that what you will. I wanted to resolve the mystery of just how many lines of dialogue Harry has in the PC version of the game. I'm led to believe he has many more in the PS1 for some reason, but there you have it. Guys, in case I missed any line, do let me know, but I believe this is all. Imagine throughout one school year saying 20 things, including noises. He's a very shy guy, Harry, isn't he? Now, my second and penultimate surprise for you is something I like to do in these kinds of videos lately, and that's giving awards to certain levels. So first of all, what about the level with the highest number of beans? Now this is not gonna surprise anyone, but it's the corridor to the girls' toilet, or troll chase as I prefer to call it. You have 89 beans sprayed all across the floor here. And if you do take care to collect all of them and not get clubbed to death or fall into a deathly pit, boy are you in for a reward for that diligence. Now this is a very special level, it's unlike all the others, so I was thinking what's the second top level with the highest number of beans except for this one, because it's just so different from all others in the game, right? I didn't want to make this easy on myself. So I would also give the award to Wingardium Leviosa lesson level. This includes the Alohomora challenge and the Wingardium Leviosa challenge, but spread across this relatively short level are 82 beans. This is absolutely insane. I find this even more interesting than there being 89 beans in the troll chase, so I absolutely wanted to mention both. The next award I'm gonna give is to a level which brings me the biggest amount of pain, and that's the level with the most secrets. That's 8 secrets in the Fire Seed Caves level, and again, I'm not gonna repeat myself. You know already that I have only found 7 out of these under the impression that the chest behind the boulder is a secret. And who knows, maybe it is and something else isn't, I don't know. The point is, this is the single level with the highest number of secrets. There are a couple where you can find 7 secrets, but this is the only one with 8 and there isn't a level with any more. Now, for the level with the highest number of enemies, and this might surprise some of you because it's relatively in the beginning of the game, this is Herbology class. There are 51 enemies. And this is all because of those spiky bushes being literally everywhere. There are also a couple of gnomes, doxies, venomous tentaculars, but it's the spiky bushes they went crazy with. And I think it can all be attributed to this one room with the 4 corners, each guarded by 4 spiky bushes, with a chest with 4 beans inside it. They went absolutely crazy. Very bloodthirsty spell, Incendio. Okay, and now 2 more awards I have to give. The one I'd like to start with is an award for my least favorite level. I think it's important to also discuss this. Now, I wouldn't say the game really has any bad or atrocious level that's a pain to play through. However, that's probably coming out of my experience with this game. If I was a new player, I know exactly which level that would be. Probably not gonna be a surprise, but there we go. The chess game. Boy, oh boy, where do I start with this one? First, big disappointment, and I know this is very subjective because I'm one of those kids that was taught how to play chess. This is not an actual chess game. I do not understand this decision. I mean, I understand that playing an actual chess against the computer would be too much of a difficulty spike for a kid, right, playing this game. However, I feel like rather than making poorly communicated puzzle, they could have instead have us play actual chess against computer and just have that computer play poorly. And this would also be a great way for the kids to learn how to play chess. And remember that weird square rectangular crown marker on the tiles? That's something that could have easily been used to highlight the different eligible points where you can move different pieces. This is essentially how I feel this could have been done. Make it an easy game of chess, or heck, make it even a half-finished game of chess, something along those lines. just to let kids experience it. This was a big disappointment, but even if you disagree with me and think that making a unique puzzle out of this was a better choice than making chess, I mean, let's look at Order of Phoenix video game where you have to play very difficult chess against very difficult computer opponents to 100% it. Another point I hate is that the rules of this puzzle were not explained at all. It's a dumb trial and error until you finally figure out how this works. What's worse is that they plopped a save game book right in front of one of the longest cutscenes in the game, and each time you have to repeat this challenge, you'll have to rewatch this cutscene over and over and over, unless you know in advance not to pick it up and do it after the cutscene, which you never know on your first try, and you would never risk not picking up a save game book, right? So this is really the level which infuriates me, and pretty much other than this, there's nothing else, no secrets, no goodies, nothing interesting. The only plus points I can give it is that the pieces are faithful to the movie and look absolutely badass, and I love the sound effects. But it's not enough. I think this is the weakest level of the game. But what about my favorite one? Well, if you've been paying attention in this Let's Play, you already know which one that is. It's a level that essentially made 5 appearances in this game, and I'm of course talking about Hogwarts' main entrance. There is a specific point in the story, right after our first Quidditch match against the Slytherin, where we get to visit it on our way to Lumos lesson. And this is my favorite part of the game. It's the Hogwarts free roam I always dreamed about as a kid. It's where we get to socialize with other students, see what lives they have, what complaints they have, what are their thoughts and feelings about Snape, Peeves. It makes it feel like such a living, breathing world, and I feel like this is one of the most ambitious levels in this game that the devs have made. And it shows, in my humble opinion. I love this level so much, the exploration. Even though we're told to hurry to lesson, this is one of the few moments in the game we are not running late to lesson. And this to me, as a kid, was very important to enjoy my time, to explore the different classrooms freely. And just the fact there is an actual door that opens automatically when we approached made me feel very welcome. And of course it wouldn't be a good level without Fred and George appearing out of a cool entrance somewhere. So this is the moment whenever I play the game I am at my happiest. I love you, Hogwarts main entrance. It also highlights how much Hogwarts changes each time, which is a unique feature to the Philosopher's Stone game. That's not the case in Chamber of Secrets or Prisoner of Azkaban. It only changes here, and it's only visible in this level 5 times throughout the course of the game, and each time we walk through here, we feel we have made progress. This is the living, breathing heart of Hogwarts in the first game, and this is why it's my most favorite level. Now, as the video is approaching its conclusion, I did promise you a third surprise. And I feel it very appropriate to just finish with a gallery of all the cards we have collected. Now, I'm not going to be reading over those lines, neither is going to be Stephen Fry. It's up to you to enjoy them whilst listening to some cool music. It's up to you to just go through them at your own time. I just want to give it a unique twist, and that's that all the cards I'm going to show you out of the 25 we collected, I'm gonna show in the order that they are numbered in, not in the order that we collected them, not in the order they're sorted in the Folio Magi album for whatever reason, just following the numbers that they actually have, starting with number 1 and ending with number 101. Which is weird because we have 25 cards and according to Ron we have the whole set. And from my understanding there are even less cards in the PS1 version of the game, but let's not get carried away by that too much. So enjoy the browse through the gallery. Thank you so much for being here with me over this December journey. It was very difficult to pull off this project, and I decided to do it at the very last moment. In the final week of November is essentially when the idea popped into my head. As you can imagine, I didn't have much time to tackle it maybe as thoroughly as I would have liked, but nevertheless I hope you learned something new about the game, or if you never played it, makes you willing to try it out. With that in mind, have a wonderful rest of the holidays, have an absolutely amazing new year, and I will see you again with a new and exciting project in 2024.